Well, folks, today we are going to be taking a look at the 2028 presidential election. Specifically, today we are going to be looking at the 2028 GOP primary overview, a complete overview of the primary process, what we expect going into the primaries that will most likely start somewhere in January, February of 2028. We should have an idea of who the GOP nominee will be probably by March or April, and will be officially nominated later in the summer, sometime June or July, whenever the convention is held. Now, right now, we need to start and expel just one little thing real quick. And we actually have two videos that went out yesterday. Actually, one will go out this morning, one went out last night, but talking about Donald Trump running in 2028. We know Donald Trump yesterday put out the Trump organization posted online that they are now selling Trump 2028 hats through their store. We discussed it really in depth. If you want to take a look at that, just go back the last two videos that our channel has posted and you get our full rundown on Trump running in 2028. But let's just get to the realities of it. Donald Trump legally cannot run for president. He cannot become president on January 20th, 2029. The Second Amendment clearly forbids him and bars him from being president for a third term. Regardless if they were consecutive or not, no president can serve more than 2 terms, whether if they're consecutive or not. But that has not stopped President Trump from speaking out on this, saying that he has some intentions of running for president in 2028. But he's also said to other people that no, he has no intentions of running in 2028. We're going to see what this really looks like. It would be very foolish of Donald Trump to run in 2028. So we are going to look at, of course, candidate number 2, which is really number 1, which is J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is the current vice president of the United States right now. J.D. Vance has a serious lead when you're looking at the polls. He has a 25% aggregate lead over the nearest contender, which was Donald Trump Jr. And Trump Jr. has already came out and said he has no intentions of running in 2028. He's made it very clear. So I'd like to see what this data looks like. I'm guessing a lot of that is going to go to J.D. Vance, but what does that split up between Vance, DeSantis, maybe RFK, Nikki Haley? We're going to see what would that 20% of the vote really spread out between. But obviously, he has a serious lead in these polls, considerably better than Harris has going into 28. Right now, she has an aggregate 10% lead over the nearest opponent. And this lead has been shrinking every single day. Vance enjoys a very healthy 25% margin over his next contender. Most likely, if Donald Trump Jr. is done in this race, Vance is polling on average over 50% in these polls. A big change going into the 2028 election relative to the 24 election, the 2020 election, even the 2016 election, is that we will have a younger candidate in this race. We will most likely have a younger candidate on both sides of this race. Someone who will represent a huge power shift, not only in Washington, D.C., but in each, the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, from an older candidates like Donald Trump, like Joe Biden, like Hillary Clinton, like Kamala Harris, to much younger candidates, people like J.D. Vance, people like AOC, people like Ron DeSantis you could look at, people like Pete Buttigieg. These are the people who are going to be leading each respective party into the future. And it is very, very good to see that we are moving on to the next generation, giving the next generation a good shot at this here. Now, the VP role, the vice presidency, really gives J.D. Vance a sense of visibility and true visibility and relevance in the day-to-day lives. People like Donald Trump Jr. or Robert F. Kennedy Jr., they are in the media. There's no doubt about that. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as the head of HHS, clearly has a lot day-to-day is in the news. And so is Ron DeSantis. As a governor of one of the biggest states in the union, he does a very good job staying relevant in the day-to-day, staying in front of the cameras, letting the country know what he is doing. He clearly is doing that. There is no doubt about that. But historically, vice presidents are very well positioned to win a nomination. You look at people like Biden. You look at people like Bush after Reagan, or you look at Al Gore. Many vice presidents do very well in the primary. Whether it's the next primary or not, they typically do well in primaries when they decide to run. And J.D. Vance represents the populist portion of the Republican base. He will be able to bring out one of the big challenges he's going to have is to bring out unity in the party. Any candidate who gets the nomination is going to have to bring unity into the party. But we know Donald Trump has coalesced power within inside of the Republican Party. Will his predecessor be able to do the same thing? That is going to be the initial litmus test for whoever the nominee is. Can they coalesce the Republican Party? That is big. Now moving on to someone like a Ron DeSantis, who is a number 2 in the polls right now, and viewed by many conservatives as a culture warrior, and a lot of Republicans are very favorable of Ron DeSantis and the job he has done in Florida. Now, everybody can make the case that Florida has been trending to the right since the late 90s, but ultimately, if you look at the margin that we saw in the governor's race in 2018, Ron DeSantis won the state not even by a half a percentage point. He won by like 30,000 votes, I believe. 33,000 votes he won by. He goes on to 2022 to win by 19 points. This was 1.5 million votes Ron DeSantis won by in this race. So yes, has the statement shifted to the right? Absolutely. Was Ron DeSantis the candidate he took advantage of the moment? And he really was the leader in Republican politics that took it from a maybe lean state to a solid conservative state. Remember, even though it's been trending to the right for a very long time, remember, Barack Obama won this state in 2012 and he won it in 2008. Remember, Trump flipped the state only by at 1 point in the state of Florida. He only won the state by 1.2 percentage points. It is just absolutely insane. Look at this. United States presidential election in Florida. Donald Trump only won the election by about 113,000 votes. For a state where you had over 9 million votes cast, that's not a pretty big margin. It wasn't. You look at places like Miami-Dade, voted for Clinton by 30 points. Broward County voted by 35 points. Palm Beach, 15 points. Fast forward to 2024. Between Trump and DeSantis, you see, look what happens. Miami-Dade, 11 points for Trump. Harris still won Broward County by 17 points, but a much smaller margin than you saw Clinton win it by back in 2016. And then Palm Beach almost voted for Donald Trump. And look at this. You had some major flips here. Major county flips for Donald Trump in this race, which just showed support solidifying behind the Republicans in Florida. That margin of victory for DeSantis in 2022 was huge for the Republican Party. But the reality is that he alienated a lot of Republican voters in the 2024 election. It's kind of a nuanced way to look about it, but at the same time that he alienated a lot of voters, he also has roughly like $10 million or $9 million cash on hand post-2024 election. Put him in a relatively good position to launch a campaign in 2028. We know he is term limited as governor in Florida in 2026, and he is looking for his next move. The presidency is the next move. That is the next move in Florida, or for the governor from Florida. Some other things that, you get to a general election. Yes, does he have some views? Maybe his abortion views may not be viewed popularly by especially suburban women. I think he could struggle with them. But ultimately, we're talking about the primary. And his decision to run against Trump in 24 definitely hurt him in the primary. And not only in the primary, but in the Republican Party as a whole. Now, there's some other candidates whose names have been floated out there. People like Nikki Haley. I think it would be an embarrassment to the Republican Party if after 10 years of Donald Trump, that they decided to go back to a neocon like Nikki Haley. That would be a terrible, terrible decision. She may have some appeal that Republicans currently do not have. There's no doubt about that. To moderates, to women, to people from the suburbs. But she is a candidate that is not for the people. She would be someone who is for the military-industrial complex. I would not be thrilled. I would be very disappointed in the Republican Party if that is the direction they go. Now, there have been other names that have been thrown out here. People like Marco Rubio, who was a senator from Florida, longtime senator from Florida, eventually he ran in 2016 for president and then was on the short list to be Trump's VP in 2024 and eventually became his Secretary of State, approved by the Senate 99-0. Every voting member voted for Rubio for that. And I think he could be a good candidate. Rubio's the future of the party. He looks like the future of the party. He's very articulate. He's very well spoken. I do like him very much. And I wouldn't be opposed to a Marco Rubio candidacy. I don't know if 2028 is the time, but I wouldn't be opposed to it. Some other names that have been thrown out there, people like Brian Kemp, governor from Georgia, term limited in 2026, potentially running in the 2026 Senate race in Georgia. People like Vivek Ramaswamy, which I think he's going to stay in Ohio. He's made it pretty clear he is looking to create a statewide profile, not a national-wide profile. He wants to win. He's running for the governor's race in Ohio. That could be a very, very good election for Vivek. But I don't think 2028 is where he's looking to. Some other people like Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia. I think he could be a very good candidate. I think he's a very charismatic candidate. I think he has good energy. He's a good-looking candidate. And I think his policy prescriptions are, by and far, very, very popular nationwide. And that could be considered by the Republican Party. But ultimately, I don't see that Republican Party going in that direction. I definitely see them more going in the Ron DeSantis, J.D. Vance direction, more than the Youngkin or Rubio direction of the party. But ultimately, I could be wrong. I 100% could be wrong. We will see where we are at in 2 years from now. But we know the big issues that are going to be driving the base in 2028. Immigration and border security. That's going to be a huge one. You look at polling here, what are the top issues for voters? The economy, inflation, safeguarding democracy, immigration, healthcare, national debt. Inside of a GOP base, it is going to be immigration and border security, economic policies, culture issues like anti-woke, anti-CRT, anti-all of that, the viruses, that's not the right word I'm looking for, but these really sick, demented ideas that have infiltrated the youth of America. They've infiltrated the youth of America. That is going to be a big thing. Foreign policies, addressing China. What happens with the Ukraine-Russia war? And then, of course, entitlements. That is going to be a big one going into maybe not 2028, but 32 for sure. Because we know that if nothing is done to Social Security, they're going to have to slash benefits by a fourth in about 10 years from now. Whoever is running in 28, and you can assume that if Vance is the nominee or the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, is the nominee in 28 and wins, they will be the nominee again in 2020 or 2032, which that means they're going to have to address entitlements. How is the country going to deal with entitlements? Because they will see a reduction of a quarter of benefits being paid out will be slashed overnight if entitlements are not reformed. But obviously, in this race, Trump's endorsement will most likely clear the field, and given that person will have a huge advantage. It may not completely clear the field, but it will for the most part, and it will give that person a huge advantage in not only in the general election, but in the Republican primary. And the candidate will most likely be a much younger, much more in tune with the younger generation. They will look more like the future of the party. And a big part of that comes from shifting away from mainstream media towards alternative media. That's going to be a big thing. How do these Republican candidates play into this more alternative media form? You can already see Democrats are laying the groundwork when it comes to alternative media. You see Gavin Newsom started his own podcast. Buttigieg is going on different podcasts that Trump went on during the 2024 election. You're really seeing the younger generation playing into this media form. And will this next nominee be able to bring the party together, at least in the post-Trump era? It will be a huge feat that will this new candidate, this new nominee, be able to drive low propensity voters to the polls in the era post-Trump? We know Trump did a great job with that in 2024. Will the next candidate be able to do that? Will they be able to drive out low propensity vote? Or where will they be able to hold on to all of that support? If they're not driving out low propensity voters, where else can you get votes? Then you have to go to moderates, independents, suburban women. That's where you have to go for your votes then if you cannot drive out that low propensity votes. But one thing that I think that we really need to acknowledge as a party that I've been really talking about a lot, that I think we should maybe not have alarm bells going off, but I think we should definitely be considering what the implications of this are. This was a poll taken by YouGov in The Economist, and it asked for 2028, thinking about the Democrat or Republican Party nominee for president in 2028, which is more important to you? Electability or policy agreement? Democrats, by and far, about a third of the party say electability is number one. A larger portion, 62% of Republicans, say policy agreement is number one, with only 38% of Republicans saying that electability is what they're looking for in a nominee, which could be a huge issue. You can be in complete policy unity, policy purity. But if that person can't get elected, you know what they are? Sitting at home twiddling their thumbs with no say in the process. That's what they are. So I really think Republicans, if this is where the Republican Party is at, I think they really need to reconsider. They really need to reconsider this, because this could lead us to disaster. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but I think the Republican Party really needs to reconsider this position if this is really where the party is at right now. But jumping to a general election. Every general election hinges on support from the swing states. This is where races are won and lost. You can look at 2020, for example. In this race, Joe Biden won the popular vote by roughly 7 million votes. He won the popular vote by. But he only won by a couple 100,000 votes in reality. Look at this. If you're looking at a map right here, and let's just say this right here. This is where the map was in 2020. You saw Trump, the only swing state that he held on to was North Carolina. Okay, this puts Republicans at 235, Democrats at 303, which something is not right there. Never mind, I'm sorry, I took a wrong look at that. But ultimately, all Trump needed to do, he needed to win the state of Georgia. He needed to win the state of Arizona, and then he needed to pick off one of the blue wall states. So you're talking, okay, Arizona, he won by, let's see, Trump, I believe in Arizona, he won by what, 10,000 votes? Or excuse me, Biden won by 11,000 votes. In Georgia, he won by 11,000 votes. In Wisconsin, he won by 20,000. So you're telling me that, so he may have won the popular vote by 7 million votes, but the reality is he really only lost the election by about 40,000 votes in 3 different states. That's the reality of the situation here. And now let's reset this to the 2028 election, but it was not that far off. It really wasn't. And in 2024, Donald Trump won all 7 swing states and 1.5, he won the popular vote by roughly about 1.7 percentage points. The Kamala Harris campaign spent, what, $1.5 billion to lose all 7 swing states? All 7 swing states. Picked up places like Nevada, won Arizona by a big margin, won Georgia, not by a great margin, won North Carolina, won Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Flipped all 6 out of the 7 swing states here. And as of right now, I don't see any huge shifts in the swing state necessarily. Excuse me. I think some places that you need to look out for. Places like Minnesota. In the era of Trump, Minnesota has become a much more Republican state than it ever was before. Look at this. You have Obama winning Minnesota by 10 points. Obama winning it by 7 points. Then Clinton only wins it by 1.5 points. Biden back to 7 points. Trump back to 4 points. Look at places like New Jersey. Trump won it by less than 6, Harris won it by less than 6 points. Let's go back to 2008. This was an Obama plus 15 state. An Obama plus 17 in 2012. It actually moved further to the left in 2012. Let's go back to 2000. Look at this. Gore's winning it by 15. Actually got a little bit closer with Kerry. But look at this. It is a much, much closer. So I think New Jersey is a place to keep your eye on. And with Republican operatives like Scott Presler on the ground there looking to flip the state, I think there's some possibility there. And then New Hampshire. New Hampshire's always kind of been tilting towards the Republican Party. Obviously, at the state level, New Hampshire is a very conservative state. But at the federal level, they have 2 Democrat senators. They have 2 Democrats who represent them in the House of Representatives. They have not voted for a Republican in the presidential election since 2000. And they only voted for by about 1 point. So it was a very, very close election. But it's always been pretty close there for the Democrats. But look at this. Trump came within what? 0.5 percentage points of winning, like 3,000 votes of winning in this election here. Very, very close. But the next nominee, the reality of a general election for the next nominee is they're either going to need to drive out support from low propensity voters or have good appeal to moderates, independents, and voters who don't conform to either party. That includes women in the suburbs. So If the next nominee cannot drive out low propensity voters the way Donald Trump was able to do it, they better take a hard approach on how they're going to get moderates, independents, and women out to the polls for the Republican Party. That is just a fact of life that the GOP has to recognize. Because in a general election, the economy is going to be a top issue. It will be. And now for women, it'll probably be abortion or something like that. Something really stupid like that. But at the end of the day, the economy, inflation, wages will be a top issue. Donald Trump really needs to get his stuff together when it comes to tariffs and what he is doing, reciprocal tariffs. The country supports him on his overall idea, but they are not supporting him with his individual tactics that he has taken when it comes to tariffs. Yes, he's negotiating trade deals now. Yes, that is great. He's negotiating to get non-tariff barriers lower. That is wonderful. But he needs to make sure he sets the Republican Party up in a good position so they are loved by the country when it comes to the economy. And Poland does not look good so far for that. It doesn't. I hate to be that person, but we're here to tell you the truth. We're not here to coddle your feelings. We're here to tell you the truth. Look at this. Trump underwater, 14 points underwater on the economy. That is a big issue. And this is not an isolated poll. There is poll after poll after poll after poll that shows it trending in this exact direction here. Now, we're going to touch on the economy here, but that is the true X factor. That really is the X factor in the 2028. I think a lot of how the Democrats, things that play out with the Democrats is going to be a big factor, but ultimately the X factor is how is Donald Trump able to deliver during his term, especially on those top issues, the economy, the national debt, job growth, wages. Is Donald Trump able to renew his tax cuts and even further the tax cuts, 15% for U.S. manufacturers, no taxes on tips, Social Security, or overtime? Is he able to seriously reduce government spending? You have DOGE doing its job right now, but you also know that they're going to have to pass an appropriations bill later this year. Is Donald Trump able to reduce spending through the appropriations process? What kind of trade deals? Are we still in a trade war with other countries? What kind of trade deals is Trump able to get? Is he able to open up new markets for American products? Is he able to reduce tariffs? Is he able to deregulate the economy? You know, if we want to decouple from China like Trump wants to, we need to deregulate the hell out of the economy. You have to deregulate. You have no other option but to deregulate. Because let's say, just for numbers, China, they dominate when it comes to rare earth minerals. We all know that. They dominate when it comes to rare earth minerals. But in the United States, it takes 30 years to go from A to B, from, you want to build a rare earth mineral processing facility to you're open and operational. Not even at full capacity, just open and operational. But in China, they do it in 6 months. I think we need to have some sort of, just kind of, a period where there are, not to say there's no rules, because that's not what I'm trying to say, but expedited permanent processing so we can decouple from China very, very quickly. That's what you need. And all of this will play into how Trump is able to deliver during his term. And then just, of course, the overall feeling of the economy. How do Americans trust the Republican Party when it comes to the economy? Do they feel America is on the right direction? But so ultimately, if we're looking at a 2028 general election, these are going to be the swing states. I think right now, the person who is best positioned to win in 2028 in a primary is J.D. Vance. It's like, I would probably, I'm like 55 DeSantis, 45 J.D. Vance. Only because of some foreign policy differences that I have with J.D. Vance. But ultimately, they would be both formidable candidates in 2028. I think they would be great for America. Because every general election is going to hinge on swing states, and you need to have a candidate that can appeal to swing state voters. You have to. You have to. And the GOP primary in 2028 will be a fierce battle for the future of the party. In the same way 2016 the primary election turned out to be a battle between the old guard of the Republican Party and the outside force, the kind of post-Tea Party movement from Donald Trump. That's going to be the battle in 2028. It will, are we going to continue on with the Trump legacy with someone like DeSantis or Vance or Rubio or even someone like, it's like Steve Bannon he's not going to be the nominee. Let's just get that out there right now. Or are they going to move back to someone like a Nikki Haley? Is that the direction the party is moving? Which I don't think so. I have a very hard time seeing that happen. But regardless, the next nominee is going to need to be able to unite the party without Donald Trump, and needs to build their own political machine on their own. They need to be able to build up the infrastructure, the groundwork on their own without Donald Trump. Donald Trump will not be here forever. We need to learn to win post Donald Trump. So let me know your thoughts down below on everything. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. And we will catch you next time, folks.